Vamp, Chapter 1. I stood there staring at the large world map hanging on my wall while fiddling with a dart I had in my hand. The map was 8 feet by 6 feet and was exactly that, a map of the world. Over time I had accumulated a number of green X's which were scattered across the map. It was a timeline of my life and wherever the dart decided to land. My number one rule: never stay in a city or state longer than a year. On average, I would move around every 9 months. I couldn't risk having a permanent residence for much longer than that. I know that I could be found easily, and it's best to just keep moving. I closed my eyes and spun around a few times, stopped, and threw the dart at the map. When I opened my eyes, they scanned across the countries, quickly searching for the red fins of the dart. In the corner of my eyes, I saw it, and it drew my eye to the top left of the map. Alaska was the place the dart had chosen. There were no X's anywhere near Alaska, so at least it would be someplace new. I walked up to the map, looked at the closest surrounding cities by the dart, and decided to travel to Good News Bay. It was a city right on the coast of Alaska and the Bering Sea. I pulled the dart out of the wall, pulled the tacks from the corners, folded it up, and put it in my bag. Packing wasn't really a problem, and my Jeep was already loaded up. I didn't have very many valuable items. More or less the only thing I truly cared about was the locket that constantly hung around my neck. Otherwise, as far as I was concerned, I had created the idea of being a minimalist. Other than the necklace, I only have a few pieces of clothes, shoes, my extra bottles of blood, and some knickknacks, which I had already thrown in my vehicle. I climbed into the driver's side of the Jeep and made sure I had my music ready to play. I put the key in the ignition and turned it. I was off to Alaska. The highway and scenery that I had grown accustomed to slowly fell into the distance, and before I knew it, nothing looked familiar. Before I knew it, my fuel light was ringing, and it was then I snapped back into reality. Generally, when I drive, I tend to think back in time to that first month as my new self. I remember how I didn't know my own strength, and I would wind up breaking glasses in my hand, squeezing hands too hard when greeting, and closing one too many doors too hard. It took me a while to get everything under control. What was even stranger was not breathing anymore. I don't need air, yet I still breathe, not only to make me look human, but just out of pure habit. All in all, I can't complain. There are so many who have it worse than I. I am technically 98 years old, but stuck in the body of a 23-year-old. Boo-hoo, right? I have more money than I know what to do with. So much that I donate 75% and still have millions in the bank. I don't dabble in illegal affairs and mafias to earn my money. I buy houses that need to be fixed up and sell them for about 3 times what I paid for. I also managed to score some amazing compound interest savings accounts in Switzerland back in the 50s, so I'm set. When people make comments about the amount of work I could accomplish in such a short span of time, I just smile and thank them. People have no idea how much work you can get done when you don't have to sleep, and don't need help, since I can take down a wall with my bare hands and lift things 5 times my own weight. Even though driving relaxes me, it also gives me too much time to think. The majority of the time, I think about my mother, father, Adeline, and all of the great times we had. I call it time traveling to myself because I can see the memories of the past so vividly. The pain of not being able to be by my mother's bedside when she took her last breath is still a pain that lingers deep within my hollow body to this day. My mother believed I had died on that fateful trip to Romania following my stupid passion. She never saw me again, neither did my cousin Adeline. I still don't even know if she is living. I never heard anything about her passing from any of my contacts or investigators, but it was just too risky to look. Adeline's parents had died in an accident when she was little, so my parents took her in. We were born a few weeks apart, and we had quite a few things in common, almost everything except my interest in the myths and legends department. That didn't stop us from being the best of friends, though. We cared about each other more than anything. No one messed with either of us. I remember a specific time when a boy had been picking on me when we were younger. Adeline walked right up to him and kneed him in the crotch and told him to never bother me again. She was always bigger than I was, even though she was younger. But she got her point across, and the boy never bothered me again. It was just one of those many times she had stood up for me. I was just about 6 hours into my drive when I saw a small diner off the side of the road and pulled in. A burger and fries sounded terrific. I can eat. I don't need to eat food to survive, but I enjoy a few certain dishes just because. Eggs Benedict, crab, chocolate, burgers, and pastas have always been on the top of my list. After my burger, I hopped back in the car and finished the long trek I had left to Alaska. Since I don't have to sleep and I also don't have to use the bathroom, I can cut a lot of time from driving. I have found it's nice to not have a set schedule. I can do everything at my own pace. I don't have anyone to please but myself, and I don't have any expectations to live up to. Just me and my freedom. The rest of the drive was long and boring, and I had a lot of things on my mind. I knew I couldn't stay hidden from my maker forever. Surely one of his hunters would eventually find me. I just had to try to stay one step ahead of them. I never used my real name when I purchased anything like houses, cars, plane tickets, and other things that could lead them to me. I had kept all my old license plates from all the states I had lived in and all my driver's licenses as well. I also have people who can make me a new identity at the drop of a hat, and I pay them good money to do it with no questions asked. I found myself thinking about the memories from the first few years I was a vampire. Vladimir had forced me to stay with him after my father had died. He threatened that if I ever left him, he'd come after me and the family that I had left. I was too scared to disobey him, so I followed his orders for a while. I was forced into a lot of things by him, like sex, killing, and torture. I didn't find him attractive in any way, shape, or form. He was short with these big gray eyes, which all vampires have, but he had the longest and most pointed nose I'd ever seen in my life, a thick mustache above his thin red lips, and long curly black hair that was always dirty. He, however, found me to be the most beautiful woman he'd ever laid eyes on, which I found to be quite comical. Once he realized I was planning on trying to escape, he commanded me to stay with him. When your maker commands you to do something, you must obey. It took me years and years to finally be able to defy one of his commands. I would get headaches from trying to defy him, and then one day I felt a warm sensation as though hot water was being poured over my head and down my spine, and I was no longer bound by his word. There was obviously something different about me compared to other vampires. I couldn't specifically figure out what it was, and I still don't know what happened to this day, but I didn't want to stick around and try and figure it out. I wanted to be free. Even though I was happy to be free of Vladimir, I was upset that I had lost everyone I had ever known. I thought it best that I go on with my life and my family just believe that my father and I had passed away. I forced myself back into the present and made myself concentrate on the road in front of me. I flipped my iPod on and let the music flow around me. I'd be in Alaska soon enough and I'd have to start a whole new life once again. I arrived in Good News Bay around 11:30 a.m. and used my GPS to find a real estate office. Turns out there was one right on the main street in town and I could have found it on my own. It wasn't one of the nationally known companies, it was just a small independently owned company called Dream Homes. I parked on the side of the road and went in. The door made a bell noise when it opened, and there was a tall, slender woman standing over the front desk talking to her secretary. Why, hello, I'm Jill. Can I help you with anything? Yes, I'm looking at purchasing a house here in town. I'm Gretchen. I just arrived here from Baton Rouge, I said while shaking her hand. Well, if you'd follow me over this way, we can see if there's anything that interests you, she said, leading me to the far wall of the office that had about 15 pictures of houses for sale. Unfortunately, there's not a huge selection to choose from around here. What's your price range? Jill asked. I don't have one, I said matter of fact. Jill had to balance herself by putting her hand on the desk next to her, a discreet movement a normal human wouldn't notice, but my keen observation picked up on her shock. She got a hold of herself rather quickly and said, I'm positive we'll be able to find something for you in town. What kind of houses are you looking for? I'm looking for a fixer-upper house, one that needs some work. I make a living flipping houses. Well, we don't have any rundown houses, and the last abandoned house was torn down a few months ago. Oh. I was slightly disappointed, and I didn't know how I would keep myself occupied by buying an okay house. Well, it might be good for me to just buy a decent home for once and take some time off. What do you have that you could show me today? Jill and I scanned the wall of the building, holding all the pictures of the houses that were for sale. I looked up and down and found a few pictures that interested me. She wrote down the numbers, and we found 3 that we could go look at today. The first house we went to was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and was built in 1955. The lot was incredibly small, and the garage was even smaller. It was a beige 2-story house with an unfinished basement. There was nothing seriously wrong with the house, except that it looked like it belonged in the 1970s with the wallpaper. The bedrooms were a decent size, but not what I was looking for. It did have a darling little dining room area, though. I think I'll keep this one on the list, but let's keep looking. The next one I want to show you is across town. The second house was very old-fashioned with arched doorways and original hardwood floors. It had a much bigger lot, 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and a decent-sized kitchen that needed a few minor upgrades. It had a beautiful white fireplace and oak mantel. There was a charming little dining room with a window seat, and there was an adorable little sunroom on the front of the house, which the current owners had filled with books and an extremely comfortable couch. If I decided to put an offer in on this house, do you think they'd leave some of the books and this couch? I asked Jill while we were getting back into her car. It had been an oversized brown suede couch with big matching pillows. I don't see why they wouldn't, Jill said happily. The next house won't need any real work done to it. It's rather new. The people who built it moved to a different part of Alaska, and they've been dying to sell it for months. The third house we looked at had a view of the ocean. It was a colonial-style house. It had 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, and hardwood floors with a big red brick fireplace in the living room. It was open and airy. The kitchen had black appliances and cherry cabinets with an island and dining bar. It was my favorite of the houses we'd seen, and in my top 5 favorites of all time, which should tell you something. And the price tag wasn't a problem for me, I said as I walked around the empty living room and looked out the windows to take in the view of the ocean. Yes, it is. It's been on the market forever. No one around here can really afford anything like this, Jill said. And I'm sure they would take first asking price. I could definitely afford the house, and it might be nice to take a break from flipping houses for a while. It also occurred to me that if I bought this house, the commission would surely help out Jill's income as well. Why not do something for someone else? I'll take it. Really? Said Jill. I didn't have to turn around to know that she had a surprised but excited expression on her face. That's perfect. The owners will be so pleased. Why don't we head back to the office and sign the papers? I'm sure we can have you in here by the end of the week, Jill said as she headed for the door. I followed, feeling excited about it. I was going to be the owner of a beautiful home and have some time to relax, whatever that meant. After we signed the papers, I made my way back to my Jeep and continued driving down the main street. I was going to have to find a place to stay until I could move into my new home. Luckily, there was a cute little bed and breakfast just down the road. There was a teenage girl working at the counter. She was engrossed in her iPhone and didn't even acknowledge my walking into the building. When I got up to the desk, I leaned in towards her and asked, "What you playin'?" The girl jumped in her chair and looked up at me. Her eyes were dark blue and they were as big as silver dollars. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." "It's okay. I shouldn't be playing on this anyway. What can I do for you?" she asked, regaining her composure. "I'm looking for a place to stay for about a week until I can move into my house," I said as I set my wallet on the counter. "Well, we've got rooms available. One is just a basic bedroom, the second is a bedroom that has a fireplace, and the third is a master suite. It has a fireplace, porch that looks out at the backyard, and a bathroom. I'll take the master suite." "All right. It'll be $90 a night. Breakfast is served from 7 to 10 a.m. in the dining room, and dinner is served from 5 to 9 p.m. Here's a menu of what will be served each day of the week," she said as she handed me a slip of paper. I looked down at it. Tonight they would be serving broccoli cheese soup with baked potato and chicken. It sounded delicious. "Here is the key to your room, and you can pay when you check out. Do you have any idea how many days I should book you for?" she asked as she looked back at the computer screen. "I'll probably need to stay here for at least a week," I responded. She did some more typing and then looked up at me and said, "All right, I can take you upstairs." She got up from her chair and we headed towards the staircase, and she asked, "So where did you move from?" "Louisiana." She stopped on the stairs and looked back at me with a raised eyebrow. "What made you decide to move here?" I threw a dart at a map. I said as I adjusted the bag on my shoulder. Oh, I didn't think people really did things like that, she said, turning around and heading back up the stairs. The room was on the 3rd floor of the house. Everything in the house looked and smelled original. The bedroom was painted a light blue. There was a wrought iron antique bed with white linens in the corner facing the windows. There was a cherry wood desk next to the bed with an old Tiffany lamp in the corner. There were French doors that led to the balcony that overlooked the backyard, and they were draped with crisp white linens. The only thing in the room that looked modern was the TV across from the bed. Is this house all original? The majority of the house is. A few things have been replaced, but we've tried our best to keep the house original. It's been in our family for generations, so all of the furniture is from the 1880s, when the house was originally built, except for the mattresses on the beds, and the TVs, and the internet. Cool. I turned and looked around the room, taking it in. The wireless internet password is on the desk over by the bed, and if you need anything, you can press this call button by the door and someone will come and help you. Thank you, I said. She nodded and walked out of the room. I locked the door behind her and unpacked the bag I had brought in. I put my clothes in the dresser drawers, took out the travel cooler that was filled with my extra blood bottles, and hid it in the back corner of the closet. I brought my hygienic bag to the bathroom, and I was pleased to see a clawfoot tub and pedestal sink. I walked over to the tub and turned on the hot water and threw some bubble bath in. When the water had filled up the tub enough, I climbed in and soaked. Stepping out of the tub 20 minutes later, I wrapped myself in a terry cloth towel and set up my laptop on the desk. I flipped through the TV channels, but I couldn't find anything entertaining to watch. I checked the time on my watch and realized it was almost 8 o'clock. I remembered that I thought their dinner had sounded delicious, so I decided to head down to the dining room. When I got to the dining room, I found it empty. I must be the only guest, I thought to myself. Hello? Someone called from the kitchen. I turned around to see an older lady come out of the kitchen door. Well, hi, you must be Miss Van Marken. I'm Gloria, she said, extending her hand for me to shake. I took her hand and said, Please call me Gretchen. Am I too late for dinner? Oh, not at all. Take a seat and I'll bring it right out to you. She headed back to the kitchen and I took a seat at the table. As I was getting comfortable in the seat, Gloria walked out of the kitchen with a tray of food. Here you go, ma'am. What can I get for you to drink? She asked, looking down at me. Milk, please, I said. And please, call me Gretchen. She smiled. I brought my dishes to the kitchen where I was scolded by Gloria. You didn't need to bring those in here, she exclaimed. Tomorrow, just leave them on the table and I will collect them when you're done, she said as she was scooting me out of the kitchen. After I left the dining room, I headed up to my room and decided to do some research on good news and Alaska in general. I sat at the computer until I saw the sky turn red through the French doors. It caused the room to light up, and I could see the flecks of dust and particles floating through the air. The light even illuminated a small spider web in the far corner of the room. I closed my computer and watched the light move and shift along the walls of the room. I found myself wondering who I would be meeting here, what the next year of my life would be like. Several hours later, when I saw the bright blue sky peeking through the window, I rolled out of bed and started down to the dining room for breakfast.